Welcome back to another Switched On Network video. I'm Paul FP, and if you're a subscriber, you'll already know that I'm a fan of Google and Nest owning several devices in their smart home ecosystem. But I'm a techie with, I'd say, intermediate networking knowledge, so they're not necessarily aimed at me as their main target demographic. They're very simple and consumer friendly, which is great, but for those that want a bit more flexibility and configurability, there are other options which might suit better and potentially cost a bit less too. So I'll be comparing the Nest outdoor camera range with two other industry players who were kind enough to send over cameras free of charge for me to make this video, ANNKE and Imou. They haven't paid me to be nice though, don't worry, I'll be brutal if I need to. The Nest Cam I'm mainly comparing the others to is the original first generation wired Nest Cam Outdoor from 2016, which features full 1080p HD video, a variety of mounting options and works on your home Wi-Fi and forms part of an ecosystem alongside the Hello doorbell and other things like your smart thermostat, smoke alarms, speakers, displays and Chromecast enabled TVs. Google have recently announced its successor, a second generation battery powered version, so even though I don't have one to test yet, I'll be taking that into account too. This camera, the Bullet 2E from IMOU, features 1080p HD as well, but also boasts colour night vision, an automatic security light, video recording to an SD card slot, and it'll work on Wi-Fi or via a wired connection. The security light feature's a really nice one, which up until recently Google didn't offer, but that's a feature their upcoming Nest Cam with floodlight promises. Finally, we have a camera which I'd say is perhaps geared either more towards professionals, or at least might be the sort of camera you'd end up with if you engaged a professional installer to set up a system at your home or business, the ANNKE C800. It has a 4K Sony imaging sensor, takes up to a 256GB micro SD card, and will work off PoE, meaning only one cable needs to run to it for both power and signal. It doesn't use Wi-Fi at all at this more professional level. This camera can, if you have several of them, connect up to a central DVR to record footage to a large hard drive. In this review though, I'm assuming use of a micro SD card inserted into the device itself. As you'd expect from outdoor cameras, all three are waterproof, and I'll be evaluating each camera in 5 categories to recommend which I think is best for a home user on a budget, a home user with a bigger budget, and finally for more professional setups and advanced users. Geeks, if you will. The Nest outdoor camera is extremely easy to install, even more so if the structure you're attaching it to is magnetic. I put this one up on the outside of my metal shed without drilling a single hole or screwing in a single screw, thanks to the way the mounting bracket magnetizes both to the back of the camera and also to the surface. Non-magnetic mounting options are catered for as well. You can simply screw this to the wall. It has a nice long power cable which you'll ideally run to a standard plug socket inside your house, or you could use an outside socket if it's somewhere a thief couldn't tamper with it. Once you've installed the camera, setup is extremely easy. After all, Nest products are aimed squarely at the consumer, so there's no knowledge of networking required, and you do it all via the app on your smartphone. It's as easy as tapping to add a new device, then this connects the camera to your Wi-Fi. Top marks for the Nest in terms of ease of setup. It literally couldn't be easier if it tried, even for a technophobe. The Nest Hello, recently renamed the Nest Doorbell Brackets Wired, which is both a Nest outdoor camera and a doorbell in one, is a bit more involved to install depending on your existing doorbell wiring, but handily I've already made an entire video on that, so I'll leave the link in the video description. And Google have also recently announced a new battery-powered doorbell, which might be a better option if you don't mind having to charge it now and again. The Bullet 2E isn't too dissimilar from the Nest Cam Outdoor, minus the Wi-Fi antennae and the LEDs on the front. However, the mounting mechanism is much sturdier, held in place by these 3 screws, which means it's then firmly on your wall, no magnets in sight. It's really versatile and you can mount it to a ceiling or a wall. Whilst the look isn't quite as suave and elegant as the Nest, it means it's less likely to be snatched by an opportunist thief, although if you install the Nest Cam high enough from the ground, that's unlikely to be an issue, especially as it's tethered by the cable. Like the Nest, you'll need to download the manufacturer's specific app and create an account, and then set up the camera by scanning a QR code. The plus side to that is that you get integration with the bigger Google ecosystem, meaning if you have a Chromecast and a Google Home or Nest smart speaker, you're in luck, and I'll show you what you can do with that later on. The camera comes with a fairly long power cable, and a big plus is that you can hardwire it into your home network with an Ethernet cable too if you like. Although you can use Wi-Fi if you want, you're not restricted to a Wi-Fi zone. For outdoor cameras especially, this will be a big plus for many, as it's an area where the Bullet wins big over the Nest cams. Many people won't have great Wi-Fi signal outside their homes, especially if they have thick walls, and that's exactly where you'll want to be installing a camera. I like how you can install the camera really neatly with the cable completely tucked away, because it both looks better and keeps the wiring away from anyone who might tamper with it. The connectors allow for both power and network, and it comes with a waterproof attachment which will be useful if you need to run a longer outdoor cable section. It's a shame that it doesn't also support PoE though, and disappointingly there's no web interface, nor does the app tell you the IP address of the camera, and out of the box you can't access the camera's feed other than via the app. However, with a bit of digging around the internet, I found that the camera does actually support RTSP, and you can access the stream like this. The safety code can be found in the camera options section of the app where you get the barcode. Bear in mind that by default the device will be using DHCP, so its local IP address on your network may change, and there's no way that I could find in the app to set a fixed IP address, so you'd have to do that on your router and reserve an IP address for the device. Then you can use and view the camera as part of a wider system rather than just via the manufacturer's app, which to me is a big plus. However, to this device's target market, none of that will probably matter. One of the first things you'll notice if you buy the ANNKE camera is that there's no power supply included in the box, and that's a good thing because even though it can run off a standard mains power adapter, chances are if you buy this camera you'll be taking advantage of the fact that it supports PoE, power over Ethernet, meaning that you only need to run a single cable to it for both data and power. To power this camera using PoE, you'll need a network switch which supports PoE like this Netgear one. If you're planning to install any PoE kit outside, don't forget to ensure it's properly grounded and connect an Ethernet surge protector to protect both the camera and your switch and the rest of your network from spikes. This camera doesn't support Wi-Fi at all because it's designed to be hardwired into your home or business network and act either as a standalone camera recording video to its microSD card slot or to a central box hidden away somewhere secure in your house. I'm using it as a standalone unit for this test, and I put a 128GB card in which stores over a week's worth of 4K footage when set to record 24/7. The microSD card is really easy to install, far easier than on some other IP cameras I've used, Foscam, and it's highly unlikely to be tampered with at such a height. The camera is fairly easy to install, although not quite as manoeuvrable as the Nest Cam or the Bullet, so probably comes last place in that regard. Placement options are a bit limited unless you buy an extra hanging bracket, although I managed to get good placement at the side of my house to cover my side passage, and my neighbour's also pleased that it covers his car too. I like the fact that I was forced to change the password from the default before activating this camera. Every piece of tech should enforce that. I was impressed with the extensive web interface, which is both easy to use and well laid out, although it was a bit confusing seeing PTZ options when this isn't a PTZ camera. I get that it's a common OS across the range, but rather than just being greyed out, they could just not show altogether. It's very easy to set a fixed IP for the camera, and that means I could instantly use it with other CCTV systems or Android apps, which is a big plus for me. I can mix and match camera brands and just use a generic app for all that support it. If you want though, you can use the ANNKE Vision app, the benefit of this being that you can also access recordings on the go, although in my tests this didn't always work. If you want to do this, you'll first have to go into the settings and enable this platform access. I really like the fact that this is disabled by default because my preference and advice would be not to use this. This sends data from your camera on your home network via the ANNKE servers, I presume, and from there to your app. This is reliant on another company's servers being up and running and working fast at all times, and as we saw, I had trouble accessing recordings. My preferred way of accessing both the live feed and recordings when away from home is to set up a VPN server on my home network and then dial into that using an app either on my smartphone or computer, then access the camera as if I was just at home on the same LAN. A few tips that weren't immediately obvious to me: if you buy this camera, you need to go into storage management on the web interface and format the memory card, which it calls the HDD. And you'll also have to install a plugin to be able to view the elements of the web interface related to playback and download of recordings, which is a slight shame. There's a further complication in that you may need to tell your web browser to trust downloads from the IP address of your camera because it downloads them straight to a local folder on your machine rather than a regular attachment type download. However, once you know this and have it all set up, it works really well. So clearly setup and configuration isn't quite as seamless and straightforward as on, say, the Nest Cam, but this camera is for a more advanced setup and is going to be installed by a more technically minded audience, so that's okay. So which is the overall winner? Well, the Nest Cam was definitely the easiest to install and set up. The ANNKE was the most involved, but if you're a techie or a professional installer, it wouldn't pose any problems whatsoever, and the extra steps needed certainly have their benefits. So the slightly more complicated setup on the ANNKE is by no means a bad thing, but this category was about ease of setup, so, you know, rules are rules, and the Nest wins. All Nest products are really solidly and well built right from before Google bought them out, and it continues to this day. Build quality is excellent, and I think the Nest range of cameras all look good as well. With the Hello doorbell, I was able to install it keeping all the cabling invisible, but on the Nest Cam Outdoor you can't do that unless you get the more expensive IQ model, which has now been discontinued, or the newer battery version, which you'll need to charge now and again. It's a slight shame that the cable has to be visible on this one, but c'est la vie. The Bullet 2E looks kind of cute with its dual Wi-Fi antennas, although it would have been nicer if these were internal like on the Nest. Being bigger and external though might help it get better Wi-Fi reception when further from the router, I suppose. The Bullet is quite versatile in how it lets you route the cables straight into the wall, so it doesn't have to suffer from the same cable visuals as the wired Nest Cam Outdoor. The ANNKE is very discreet, and just like the Bullet, it allows you to route the cables directly behind it and into the wall that it's mounted on, or down the side depending on what's possible in the location you're mounting it. I didn't want to hammer drill through my external walls at the top of a ladder with no one footing me, so I just went in via this air brick and discovered an old wasp nest in there while I was at it. Discretion could be a good or bad thing depending on whether you want the presence of cameras to act as a visual deterrent to any would-be thieves, or if you don't want to make your house look like there must be lots of things inside to steal thanks to the presence of one or more cameras. So it's a personal choice really what's best here. The winner on this one is a tie between the Nest Cam and the ANNKE. Personally, I don't like having the big visible Wi-Fi antennas on the Bullet, and it's a shame they don't seem to be removable if you're using a wired connection. Here's some sample footage from the Nest Cam Outdoor. Here's some from the IMOU Bullet 2E. And here's some from the ANNKE C800. And here's some nighttime footage on all three. The astute amongst you will notice that I've not set them all up in the same place for a side-by-side comparison and in-depth analysis of the picture quality of each camera. I've not done that for a few reasons. The brand's own marketing departments already do their own versions of that, and several other review videos already on YouTube do just that too. And I don't think it's that important, at least not to the extent of doing close-up side-by-side comparisons. This isn't a cinematic camera where the image needs to be really beautiful, it just needs to be clear. The Nest Cam video feed is full HD 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames a second, and the picture quality is very good and clear. The field of view is pretty wide, wider than I need really, but if it was positioned a bit closer to my house then the wide angle would be more useful. None of the cameras I'm reviewing in this video has an optical zoom, although the Nest does have a feature via the web app where you can digitally zoom in and focus only on one particular area. This is useful if you have privacy concerns and don't want to record your neighbour's gardens or other areas you don't need to. The Bullet's image is a bit less saturated and more washed out, but it's still very clear and easy to see what's going on. It's obviously a very wide-angle lens, but the image on this one does feel a bit stretched and unnatural. That might just be because the objects are closer in this case though. Maybe I should have done that side-by-side comparison after all. At night time, the Bullet gives you various options for night vision mode. Firstly, Smart Night Vision uses a standard infrared light to give you black and white video, which switches to colour with the aid of the built-in spotlights if motion is detected. This is the mode I'd recommend using, but you can, if you'd like, opt for bright colour night vision, which just keeps the spotlight on all the time when it's dark, resulting in colour video. I guess depending on where the camera is situated, that could be helpful, especially in lighting up an otherwise dark area, which could be good for safety. Next, infrared night vision is basically the way of telling it never to activate the spotlights, and then spotlights off colour night vision is where it will try to show you the best image possible without using spotlights or infrared lights. This is obviously a big ask and depends on ambient lighting, so your mileage will vary. Personally, I think having spotlights built into a camera is a brilliant idea, not just for the benefit of a possible colour image at night, but for the usefulness of having a motion-activated spotlight which can be handy at night if you're walking around where the camera is located, maybe to your garden shed or just nipping out to the car, for example. Google clearly agree with me, as they've just announced a new version of the Nest outdoor camera with a floodlight. The other obvious benefit is its function as a security deterrent, and the Bullet has another nifty trick up its sleeve that I'll come onto more in the features section. It should be noted that ANNKE do have a camera in their range which also supports a spotlight, but the one they sent me for this video doesn't, so I'm comparing specifically against this model. However, even in the absence of a spotlight, the ANNKE produces by far the best image quality of the three. This is helped, of course, by its 4K sensor made by Sony, even though it only does 12.5 frames a second when in 4K, but it's also really clear, bright and sharp, but not too sharp. So, who's the winner? Well, to be honest, you'd be happy with the image on all three cameras. I do have to say the image on the Bullet is definitely the weakest though, so if pristine image quality is of paramount importance to you, which I really doubt with a security camera, then I'd say the ANNKE is marginally the best one with its 4K sensor, which produces a really clear image, but at only 12.5 frames a second to the Nest's 30 frames a second. It was therefore going to be a tie between the Nest and the ANNKE, but then the Bullet impresses with its colour night vision and the light, so I'm going to be a diplomatic fence sitter and give everyone a point in this round. It's like a kid's sports day. All Nest cams can be viewed either on the mobile app on your smartphone or tablet, via the web, or via Chromecast-enabled TVs and smart displays around your house. So regardless of what TV you have, if you have a Chromecast plugged into it, then you can say to any speaker in your house, "Hey, show me the front door," or back garden, etc., to see an instant live feed. Viewing a live feed is only part of the reason you'll be getting a security camera though. With the Nest cameras, none of them take a micro SD card, nor will they stream to any other recording or storage devices on your home network. This is cloud storage only, and paid storage at that. Although you do still get images of events stored for 3 hours for free, and on some Nest cameras they now give you 3 hours of event video history. Many people balk at the thought of having to pay for cloud storage, although I would argue that the cloud is one of the best places to keep your footage. It's off-site, so it's fully protected in case of fire or other disaster at your home or office, and it also means that any thieves can't just rummage in your loft and take away the recordings. There are 2 options for Nest Aware, and if you pay annually it's either £50 or £100 per year. I personally pay the cheaper of these 2 options, as I don't need 24/7 recording if nothing's happening, and 30 days of event history is just fine for me. Plus, that one fee covers all your Nest cams no matter how many you have, so my Nest Hello doorbell and the Nest Cam Outdoor are both rewindable to view events, and you can download video clips either on the smartphone app or via the web. These cameras are aimed squarely at the consumer and are designed to be set up and used by non-tech savvy folks, so keeping it simple and just including a cloud storage option isn't, in my opinion, necessarily a bad thing. It's low cost and a great, easy to use service which can be accessed from anywhere on Earth. If you want more control, then you're probably a more techie user, and other options will maybe be a better fit for you. The Nest Cam Outdoor, like the one I have here, doesn't have face detection like the Hello doorbell, although the more expensive IQ model does, so if you really need or want to be able to get alerts when your camera spots certain people with their permission, then you can do. What it does have though is the ability to define different zones and control notifications based on which zone action happened in, although only if you pay for Nest Aware. This, in theory, means you won't get alerted every time someone walks or drives past, only if someone actually ventures onto your property, e.g. to try your car door handles or front door. In practice, however, though, I found this doesn't quite work as well as in theory, because on a wet day, for example, the water on the wet driveway causes reflections, which in the eyes of the Nest is motion in the driveway zone. Likewise, at night time, car headlights reflecting off the side of my wife's car also trigger alerts because that happens in the zone. Even the sun coming out from behind the clouds causing the area to brighten up can sometimes trigger an alert, although I'm in the UK so that doesn't happen that often. Other nifty features as part of the Nest ecosystem mean that if you have the Nest Protect combined smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, if they go off then your cameras will all start recording instantly regardless of your subscription, in case they capture vital evidence. It's great when devices work together like this, and if you also have a Nest Learning thermostat, then any carbon monoxide alarms can automatically turn off your boiler in case that's the cause of the leak. Things like this could literally save your life, so an ecosystem like Nest is definitely a good idea, even for more techie folk who might want more control over their cameras. Of the 3 cameras in this video, the Nest cameras are the only ones which support 2-way audio, meaning you can have a conversation with either the person at your front door or the thief who's trying to break into your house. It's always nice to have a chat with them and give them some uplifting words of discouragement. You can't use the Nest cameras with any other apps, unfortunately. You're stuck to using the proprietary Nest or Google Home apps and streaming to Chromecast devices. However, that's no bad thing, they're all very good, and if all your cameras are Nest cameras, then they'll all be in one place. Once it's set up, the Bullet's standout feature for me is the spotlight and the fact that it can be used both as a convenience, a safety feature, and as a deterrent to would-be intruders. Another trick it has up its sleeve is that you can, from the app, trigger the spotlight to flash, drawing attention to the area, which is of course the last thing a thief would want, so hopefully they'll scarper pretty sharpish. There's only 1-way audio on this camera, so you can't speak to them, though you can listen via the camera's built-in microphone, it just has no speaker. I also liked that despite not being a Nest camera, the IMOU app can integrate with Google Home, so just like my Nest cameras, I can say, "Hey, show me the garden bottom," and view the feed on my TV. And also my kids absolutely love that I called it that. What? We have 2 cameras in the garden and this one's at the bottom of the garden. Other plus points are the fact that it takes a micro SD card for free local recordings. There's an option for cloud storage as well if you like, so I like the fact that they give you the choice of either one, the other, or both. One thing that I didn't like about the Bullet is that the app seems very oversensitive, so I got a barrage of human-detected alerts until I disabled notifications, even when there was nothing even remotely human-esque in the frame. And no, I'm not talking about my children. How dare you? The ANNKE C800 comes in 3 options: turret, bullet or dome, and each can be specified with or without a microphone, which could be useful if local laws strictly prohibit that, for example. This model doesn't have a spotlight, a flashing light or a speaker. It's very much one way, meant for surveillance and recording. And it does a brilliant job of that, thanks in part to the really clear 4K images. It's a shame that the frame rate drops, so it may not be as clear for fast-moving objects, e.g. reading number plates of an offending car driving fast, for instance, but if that's a requirement, you can drop the resolution down and trade resolution for a higher frame rate. Just like the Bullet, it uses H.265 compression, meaning lower data rates for the same images to be sent across your network. This will help make it more reliable and give a smoother stream, which will be especially useful if you're accessing it from outside your home network and have a slower upload speed on your internet connection. The ANNKE is packed full of features, more than I could go into here in this video, but the things that stood out for me are the ability to define zones to control alarm triggers without having to pay a monthly fee. Take note, Nest. And you can also set privacy shields over certain parts of the image. That's really handy for if you can't avoid it pointing slightly at your neighbour's garden, and you need to avoid that to comply with data protection regulations in your locality. So in this round, it's 1 point to the Nest and 1 to the ANNKE. At the time of making this video, the Nest Cam costs £159 on the Google Store, although it can usually be found at lower prices from other retailers. I bought mine on Amazon, link in the description. And its replacement is now imminent, maybe even available by the time you're watching this. It does live view out of the box for no extra, but of course there's no micro SD card slot, so you can't record to an internal storage or to a recorder box on your network. So if you want to record your CCTV footage, and what's the point of having it if you don't, then you need to pay at least another £50 per year for Nest Aware. A rip-off, some might say, but bear in mind it gives you off-site storage for all your Nest cameras, no matter how many you have, and you never need to worry about hard drives filling up or failing. And even for the most technically inept, all you need to do is click subscribe in the app. Nothing fancy to set up. However, the Bullet and the ANNKE both cost less than half the Nest, and although the Bullet does offer the option of paid-for cloud storage, both of them allow you to record to a built-in SD card, and the ANNKE will also hook up to a wider camera system and a DVR. So if you know what you're doing and have the time and expertise to do it, you can get a pretty good setup for less financial cost than the Nest cameras. It's not for everyone though. So the winner for cost has to be the Bullet, of course, which is the cheapest. So with the points totted up on my very dodgy point scoring system there, the Nest gets 4 points, the ANNKE gets 3 and the Bullet gets 2. But that doesn't really tell the full story. If you're not particularly tech savvy and you're on a budget, I definitely recommend the Bullet. It's a great little camera, and being able to record to its own SD card as well as wired networking are both huge plus points over the Nest. However, if budget is less of a concern to you and you'll be putting the camera or cameras where they'll get great Wi-Fi signal anyway, there's absolutely no reason not to invest in the Nest cameras. They really are brilliant, and it's an excellent ecosystem with other great products from Google as well. Second, however, if you're more of a pro user or you're more tech savvy and into computers and networking, the ANNKE would be my recommendation. It's excellent quality, feature-packed and lower cost than the Nest, plus you can link it up to an NVR as well as its own SD card for capturing important footage. Both the Bullet and the Nest cams rely on a bit of trust being placed in the company supplying the service, whether it's for cloud storage or the live feed. If that worries you slightly, trusting a big and well-known company like Google to keep that data secure might make more sense than a lesser-known company, although I'm aware that the very notion of trusting Google with your data might be laughable for some, so I'm bracing myself for a pile-on in the comments there. Anyway, let me know which you'd go for in the comments, or if you've already got security cameras, let me know which ones you have. Give this video a like if you found it useful, and next up you might want to watch either this video showing how to set up and install a wired smart video doorbell from Nest, or this one on how to get super fast Wi-Fi coverage in every room of your house with Netgear Orbi. Enjoy!